Oh, okay.
It's a 2,500 square foot square.
But they've only got about 15 feet of frontage after that's private property.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, all of McCorkle. Yeah, MapQuest used to make that error.
It was frost on those ones this morning. I've never seen it.
He's the one that wrote it, so he can definitely, he's the best.
John Lennon. Oh, are you? Oh, perfect. So you're the guy who emailed us from Peter? No. Oh, okay.
Hey there. Yeah, what?
Happy New Year, Bobby.
Yeah, happy New Year to you. Thank you. You think I should? You think I should?
Not going to be an exact finish to qualify for a condition. And if you're building something small, like a new house, you qualify for a condition.
Setbacks? Are there any setbacks on there? Oh, is that the variance?
They're actually increasing the setbacks beyond what
But they only have a variance for a single story, right?
No,
There are two stories.
I guess what he thought he called it. He goes, should I get
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just check this out.
Oh, I don't want to have to vote. Should I just accuse myself? Because I don't like building out, but if it's not true,
Well, it's gonna be like,
really more else.
they just got it, they had it.
I mean, on the law, obviously it's not true. But if, what about the one on Charlie Robinson? A two-story? But that would be important to know. I need to know that from the. I mean, what the intent.
My apologies to all for my late arrival. This is the regular meeting of the St. Helena Planning Commission for Tuesday, February 15th. I'll call the meeting to order,
Wow.
and I think I'll ask Erica to lead us in the pledge.
Which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes. Keep it.
Ms. Gamera, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Monette,
Here.
Commissioner Pont,
Here.
Commissioner Hale,
Here.
Chair Hardy.
Here. Next item on the agenda is a public forum, which is an opportunity for members of the public to address the commission on matters that are not on the agenda. And because public forum, and comments are limited to things not on the agenda. The commission cannot respond in any substantive manner. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the public forum? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent items. Matters on the consent calendar, either members of the public or members of the commission may request to be pulled for separate discussion as individual items. Is there anyone on the commission who'd like to pull something from consent?
I've got a comment on 4.2, so I suppose the only way to make that is to pull it.
I think that's true.
Then I would
mean,
request,
yeah,
yes, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So item 4.2 will be pulled from the consent agenda. Is there any member of the public who would like to see some other matter pulled from the consent calendar? Seeing none, then we have item 4.1 still on consent.
Move the minutes.
Do I hear a motion?
Move
So
the minutes.
moved. Oh, okay, second.
Would you take the roll, please, Ms. Gamera?
Commissioner Pont,
Yes.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Commissioner Hale, Chair Hardy.
Yes. That brings us then to item 4.2.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, it's a rather straightforward comment, not really approaching the subject directly, so I don't feel the need for a full staff report, if that's at all okay with everybody else.
It's okay with me.
It's fine with me. I'm just going to describe the item so that everyone knows what it is. This is a presentation of an administrative approval granting to Pepina Family Vineyard LLC and Vineyard 29 LLC, authorizing a lot line adjustment between parcels APN 009-030-050 and 009-030-061. Commissioner Pont, your comment.
Okay. It's hard not to look at this and not notice the almost half dozen easements across both properties. The only one I have some particular concern with is the access easement on what is going to be the smaller parcel to access the larger parcel. The larger parcel already has an access free and clear on its own. I just see in the future when these two parcels are under different ownership that access easement would cause nothing but friction. I would like to suggest that the owner of both parcels might want to vacate that particular access easement. Not only in the future will the remainder parcel sell for a higher price because it doesn't have an access easement on it, but it won't generate problems for the two owners and, unfortunately, the city as they start feuding about the access easement. That was it.
Thank you, Commissioner Pont. Since we have pulled the matter, I have a question for staff, not bearing on the substance of the recommendation, but nevertheless. I see the CEQA determination pursuant to categorical exemption, which implies that this is a discretionary and not a ministerial approval. I find that a bit confusing since the appellate decision that involved Sierra Club challenge to the county's lot line adjustment ordinance seems to me to say that if your local lot line ordinance qualifies for exemption from the Subdivision Map Act, and the Map Act has in that section a list of the only things that you can consider in deciding whether or not to approve a lot line adjustment and be exempt. So the appellate court seems to say if you qualify for exemption from the Subdivision Map Act, that in and of itself seems to indicate that the approval's ministerial. And I'm pretty sure that we're acting on the assumption that our ordinance does qualify for that MAP Act exemption. I'm just flagging this as a subject perhaps to review with the city attorney at an appropriate time. So that's,
Thank you, Chair Hardy.
Why not now? Or, I guess he's not here, but, I mean, you don't feel it's necessary for this particular application?
no.
Okay.
It's just something that came to my attention in part because I received and forwarded to Noah an email from one of the applicant's attorneys asserting that the process is ministerial. So I thought this was an appropriate time just for me to bring that to the planning director's attention.
Isn't that something that was up in a recent lawsuit? The same issue?
Yeah, so what I'm not clear on is how that lawsuit that Chair Hardy referenced affects our ordinance. Lot line adjustments are addressed through the Subdivision Map Act. There's a process that's created through the Map Act for lot line adjustments. They are generally seen as a quasi-ministerial process in that as long as it meets the proposed parcels meet all development criteria, cities generally cannot deny them. However, they can condition their approval, and conditioning is not permitted on ministerial processes. Therefore, it is somewhat of a quasi-discretionary. And Section 15305 does address lot line adjustments specifically in CEQA as being exempt.
So, was Mr. Pont, was Commissioner Pont, were you suggesting that they, what did you just say they can do with that they be a
Commissioner Pont was encouraging the two property owners, or the owners of the two parcels, I should say, to consider merging access to eliminate, or I'm sorry, splitting access to eliminate future
so consider
concerns.
is not the same as requiring a,
The city does not have the nexus to do so.
okay. And we couldn't ask that. You're not asking that.
No, I'm just suggesting, because the larger parcel has access already. The easement gives the larger parcel two accesses, and frankly, that's just a formula for problems in the future. For us, for the parcel owners, for everybody.
Are there any other commission comments? If not, is there a motion?
Move the staff recommendation.
A second.
Ms. Gamero?
Commissioner Pont,
Yes.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Commissioner Hale,
Yes.
Chair Hardy.
Yes. That brings us to the public hearing section of the meeting, and item 5.1, a request by Michael Burns for adoption of a resolution approving a demolition permit and design review in connection with demolishing an existing single-family residence and associated structures to accommodate construction of a new single-family home. The property is located at 963 McCorkle Avenue in a medium-density residential zoning district. It looks like this is Mr. Heacock's project, but I don't see him present. Are you presenting then?
I'm filling in.
Okay. Director House, please.
Thank you, Chair Hardy and Commissioners. The item before you is identified as a request from Michael Burns for approval of a demolition and design review in order to demolish an existing 865 square foot manufactured single-family home and associated on-site structures and construct a new 1,380 square foot single-family home and carport. 963 McCorkle is a 2,500 square foot substandard parcel, which is existing non-conforming, located west of Allison Avenue on McCorkle in the medium density zoning district. As identified in this slide, there's a variety of zoning districts and land uses surrounding the site. This is an aerial photograph with the lot line superimposed over it so the commission can see the context, and this is the parcel in question with a variety of land uses surrounding it, as I mentioned, just to identify the parcel again and the surrounding lots for some context. The site plan here is the existing site plan on the left and the proposed site plan on the right. The project was subject to the approval of a variance in 1991 granting reduced setbacks from the standard medium-density residential district. And this variance allowed a reduced front yard setback of 15 feet, a side yard setback of 0 feet on the left side, and 5 feet on the right side. The 0 setback was intended to accommodate a carport or garage, which is currently located there, and reduce the rear yard setback to 11 feet. The project proposes to use the front and rear setbacks and increases the side setback from 5 feet to 10, and then also maintains the 0 foot lot line, setback for the left side where the carport's identified in the proposed site plan. So this slide identifies the existing and proposed elevations primarily from the front. The project, as mentioned, proposes to demolish the 865 square foot single-family, single-story home and associated garage constructed in 1991 in favor of constructing a new 1,380 square foot, two-story single-family home and 200 square foot garage. The project includes a variety of materials, including horizontal lap siding and metal roof. As identified in the staff report, staff finds the project exempt from the requirements of CEQA and consistent with multiple general plan and housing element policies. As mentioned, the site is zoned medium-density residential, and while it is well under the minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet, it is a legal non-conforming parcel and meets all zoning criteria of the district, including height, lot coverage, floor area ratio, with the exception of the setbacks. And as mentioned, those were approved. The reduced setbacks were approved in 1991 through a variance, which is transferable to the new owner, providing them with a property right. But however, the design and development of the site would be subject to all other development criteria. Staff did get a legal opinion on this to ensure that the appropriate variances or the existing variances could be applied both to the proposed development and maintaining through the existing processes. So staff did not require a small lot application. There's no use permit proposing small lot standards because the project meets all medium density development criteria with the exception of the setbacks, which were approved through the previous variances. And those do carry through as property rights per Municipal Code Section 17.08110, which talks about the ownership and transferability of permits and past approvals. So given all of that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission determine the project be exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15301 and Section 15303, and accept the required findings and approve a resolution granting demolition and design review approval for the project at 963 McCorkle. This slide does identify that I'm prepared for questions. However, per our updated guidelines, the applicant has prepared a presentation.
Can you just tell me if this is where it is with respect to the apartments that are on?
There's one parcel I can show you on the slides.
Kitty corner across the street, I think.
There's one parcel between this site and the apartment project, which is, there's one lot and then one more, and there's an apartment project there.
Which way?
To the right.
To up?
Yes.
So this
The beige roof, that's correct.
Okay. And the house in front of that, what's in front of it that goes on to Charter Oak?
So that house fronts onto Charter Oak. That's the rear yard of that house, and they store an RV there, which you can just barely see the roof line of either the RV or the cover. I think it's a covered storage location.
This parcel is the backyard of the Charter.
That Charter Oak parcel goes all the way to the McCorkle frontage.
So this is connected to the Charter Oak house?
No.
If you look at what would be the left lot line of the yellow triangle,
Yeah.
then that long red rectangle that's next to it is one parcel.
The one this way. Oh, well,
To the left.
okay.
That's one lot.
Right, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
What is right behind the,
Oh, so there's an existing undeveloped lot that's a flag parcel directly.
that's undeveloped that hits Charter Oak?
No, there's two lots between the project site and Charter Oak.
As the owner of two of those, can you explain?
Yeah, maybe that'd be better.
Oh,
Hold on. First of all, please, no comments except from the podium and after recognized by the chair. And
I'm sorry. Was it?
we really should try to follow our new policy and go from the staff presentation to the applicant's presentation and then direct it.
Oh, I thought you asked for questions. I'm sorry.
Okay. Would the applicant like to make the applicant's presentation at this time, please? I merely want to point and describe who the owners are of the neighboring parcels to clarify the question. Well, it is also time for the applicant's presentation.
He's not
You're
the,
not the
he's not the
applicant.
applicant, though.
You're a neighbor. Okay, I'm getting tuned in here. My apologies to all. I appreciate the offer. We'll take that up in a bit. It is time for the applicant's presentation, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Shavonna Kelly, and I work in academia at Stanford University. My husband and I used our savings to purchase a second home here in the community. Our passion for food
Excuse
and
me,
wine.
I'm going to have to ask you to pull the
Yeah.
microphone a little
Oh.
closer. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Did you hear the beginning, or should I start again?
You can go from wherever, but it just was very, very.
Okay, I'll start again. So my name is Shavonna Kelly, and I work in academia at Stanford University. My husband and I used our savings to purchase a second home here in the community. Our passion for food and wine brought us here, just like so many of you. And just like so many of you, we also struggled to find a home. We wanted our second home to be in a diverse and welcoming community where we could live one day. As an African American woman, I wasn't sure how we'd fit in, but my husband Michael has been embraced by this community in such a warm and welcoming way that I knew we made the right choice. We purchased this manufactured home and would like to build a small, single-family home with a lovely garden to help beautify the neighborhood with flowers and very nice landscaping. We feel the design of the home fits nicely with the Charter Oak neighborhood. Thank you.
That's my PDF there. Okay. Good evening to the Commission. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I also want to thank the Planning Commission and the Planning Department in particular for all their help, especially Noah and Aaron. It's been very helpful. This is a very professional outfit you have in St. Helena. I've applied for 500 to 800 permits on behalf of other clients, and I've yet to meet a department this professional. I've been in the design build business for 30 years in multiple capacities, starting as a painter, business owner, designer, forensics, troubleshooting, all sorts of things. This will be my first time designing a home, though, for myself and my wife. I've never done that before. I first fell in love with St. Helena in 1998. I took the wine train while I was attending university in Sunnyvale. A friend took me up here. We got out, walked around, and I just couldn't believe a place like this could exist. I come from Western New York. So what I'd like to do in the next few minutes, and I'll be as brief as possible, is to share basically my two approaches when I design any project or any house, including one for myself. So I try to have a certain amount of distance and a certain amount of objectivity and a certain amount of passion, and hopefully I can bring all that together. The two things that I look at are what I call the community aesthetic and the home aesthetic. The community aesthetic is how does a house, any house, in particular this house, how does it fit into the community, or how does it belong? And by belong, I mean, does it share a story? Does it have a history? Do people forget its birth? Does it recede into the past, like when it was built? And does it become a fixture or even a small landmark when people walk down towards the St. Helena Highway? Could you go to the next one, please? Yes, thank you. So I'm just going to ask Zinnia to scroll through some of the precedents and inspirations that I had for this particular design. If I was designing someplace else, I'd look for other precedents and I'd look for other inspirations, but I try to keep it local. So when I first started studying the architecture of St. Helena, these are the first two that popped out, and seeing the one on the top, I believe it's called the Ink House, on my way in the first time was, for a lover of architecture, breathtaking. Could you go to the next one, please? There's American precedents for this as well, and they're everywhere. In this particular case, I'm showing a late Georgian from 1812 and a Greek revival from 1854. When I look around, I see Italianate, I see Greek revival, I see a number of different styles, I see a continuum here. Could you go to the next one, please? And here are some local interpretations that I found. Could you go to the next one, please? One of the things I like to do for any project is just walk the neighborhood, walk the street. So I started at St. Helena Highway. I walked up the McCorkle Lane, where it becomes a street right in front of our house. And I walked to Allison. And I couldn't help but notice it. Well, there's the Maryvale Winery on the left, and there's this really darling house on the corner of Allison and McCorkle on the right-hand side. I specifically put a picture of the fence there because I actually found that one of the most inspiring things in the neighborhood. It is scaled perfectly. It is very welcoming. It sort of asks or compels you to turn the corner and see what's there. I just thought that was just a little stroke of genius, and I hope to emulate that. Could you go to the next one, please? I've been involved in about 4,500 projects in the last 3,000 years in different states and in different countries. And this particular block in McCorkle was, I find, very interesting because of its diverse styles, both aesthetically, historically, the different building heights, the juxtaposition of the buildings, the different setbacks, front yard setbacks in particular, and the mix of socioeconomic backgrounds. So if you want to just take a moment to look, we have setbacks almost 6 feet on the very bottom right. We have 0 setback at the top of the street where there's a garage that must have been converted to a small house a long time ago. I find the street to be idiosyncratic and charming. And so I wanted to find a way to fit in. So the accommodations, probably, could you go to the next one, please? This is just a little bit about the immediate building site. I don't know how well you guys can see this. I don't know if you can make it any larger. The site is surrounded by trees on 3 sides. A lot with storage behind, I believe owned by that gentleman there, and directly in front of us and to the right, the lots are empty or they have space for parking. So given all this, and if you could go back to the first slide of the PDF, Zinnia, page 1. Yeah. Yes, thank you. So given all that, my thinking was the accommodations that I wanted to make in terms of the neighborhood was use a hip roof. so you don't get as much projection. Also, to reduce the perception of the height of the building, because it is a 2,500 square foot lot. It's also a gesture of deference. It's just saying we're trying to respect the neighbor's property lines. The front porch roof is as lower as the roof of the house next door, the blue one. It's sort of a architectural simpatico, if you will. Also, the front yard setback just happens to match the blue house. The blue house is around 14 and a half feet. This one, of course, will be 15 feet. In addition, I've taken some other precautions like a passive drainage system, so I'm not flooding my neighbor's yards. And I'm using white materials and a cool roof that has high solar reflectance to reduce the urban heat island effect. Could you go to page 7, please? I'm sorry, 8, my mistake. So these are the different views I got up on the roof of the existing house. So you can see, starting from left to right, looking out at the front of the house, which has 1 bedroom, a hallway, and a stairway. And then the next one over, it says looking from bedroom 3 up McCorkle towards Allison. And then looking into the rear yard is the one on the lower left. And the one on the lower right is, I couldn't get too close to the trees. The trees are actually coming over onto the roof. But I like the trees there. It's the only shade. That side, that's the west-facing side of the house. So that's one of the reasons I decided to pull the house back an extra 5 feet, that I didn't have to do that. And then if you could go back to the first page again. Thank you. So to conclude, in terms of the home aesthetic, well, I had things in mind when I drew this, and what I was trying to convey was simplicity, smallness, scale, being welcoming, slightly self-effacing, honoring the past, no deliberate eccentricities. The house is for us, and it's for all the others that come after us. The floor plan was designed to be flexible for the disabled, for young, old, and for different family configurations, so that it'll have lots of uses for hundreds of years to come. There will be no lawn. It'll be all drought-resistant and fragrant plantings. The second story is also to reach the sun. This house gets no sun whatsoever in the mornings, especially the east sun, and it gets very little west sun in the winter as well. I plan on making the house solar-ready. This house has an enormously low energy footprint. It's been presented to the Title 24 through the California Energy Commission, and it beat the standard model by 24%. The entire cooling load for the house is a half a ton. The last thing I'll say about it is I'm using some techniques that I think we're going to see in California in the future in the new net zero landscape that we're going to be living in, which includes extensive mechanical and passive ventilation to keep the house comfortable and to prevent mildew from forming. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Are there any questions for staff from the commission? Oh, well, back.
Trying to locate it. It's not that important, but I just can't, because I live on McCorkle.
Yes, I know you do. Can you go to the page 6?
Please,
I actually took a
speak from the microphone, please.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you stop right there? So I try to take the pictures in order, sort of going down the street. So the house that we bought is right next to the one on the top left, which is that blue house. And then next to the blue house, there's an apartment building, which I believe has 4 units in it.
Yeah.
And then next to that, there's like a little tiny house that sits right on the sidewalk.
Right.
And the sort of mother house for that one, which is hard to get because there's all these olive trees, I couldn't get a very good shot, sorry, is on the top right. And then on the other side of the street, because I already showed you the little house with the fence I like so much, then there's the newer houses. I have 2 pictures of the same house, the white house with the gable on it, then the brown house, and then there's these 2 yellow houses that are very tall that have stairways going up that are like 6 feet. So our place is kitty corner to that very last house on the lower right. So when I say kitty corner, like our driveway will line up with that. And then there's this sort of really, can you go back, Zinnia? Sorry, I'm making you jump all over the place. To page 1. If you look on the top left, to the very right of the house, there's this funny looking metal fence with this red sign telling people, don't come down here. And everybody walks down, rides their bike, and the dogs are running around, and kind of like everybody like. But anyways, and I've never seen anybody ever open the gate to go in or out. There's no lock on it, by the way. And so everybody just sort of walks through there. So that's where it is. So the house, the driveway just got to the street, and then the rest of it's in the lane. So part of the siding of the house was, and I would have done it anyways, even if I had a choice, because I like the idea that the garden would be on this side where there was another garden, and then the driveway where I put it, where the carport is bumping up against the driveway for the blue house and for the flag lot. Okay.
Bobby, I don't know, it's hard to read in the scale, but if you look at sheet A1, do you have the full size? Noah will share his, because the parcel map in the upper right corner, the subject property is circled in 0, and you can see how it relates to Charter Oak there. You can see the 2 parcels between it and Charter Oak, one of them being the flag lot, which, if I understand correctly, is undeveloped. You're welcome.
Which is even smaller.
Yes, that is a tiny lot. Are there any other questions for staff?
I do have some.
John?
Noah, the variance was granted in 1991, before the 1993 general plan and before the current zoning code we work under. So, does that mean the variance granted then applies to that zoning code and not our existing zoning code, or is it something in between? For example, let me give you an example. The variance says the setback is 15 foot, right, for the front yard. Well, the standard setback under our current code, under small lot development, is 15 feet. So no variance needed for that because it meets the current code. But yet other parts of the variance, what I want to know is what part of the variance is active, which parts aren't, how does it work with our current set of codes versus the set of codes the variance was granted under?
Excellent question, Commissioner Pont. So 17-08110, which talks about the ownership and transferability of permits and approvals, specifically states that the ownership is still, or the approval is still transfers even if the site has been rezoned. And I can find the specific language for you if you'd like. And it's important to note that we are not applying the small lot standards here because they have never been applied previously and the applicant has not requested to utilize them. So this design meets all development criteria of the medium density residential zoning district with the exception of the setbacks which have been granted the variance.
So you're not treating it as a small lot, even though under our existing code, it's too small. It's less than 7,000 square feet.
So it's an existing non-conforming parcel which has been approved for development previously,
Okay.
and through the use of a variance, and is utilizing that previous approval to apply the setbacks and meets all other development standards. So the need to utilize the small lot criteria is not present.
Okay, because it's even substandard for the small lot, because that starts at 4,000 square feet, I mean, ends at 4,000 square feet, and this is 2,500 square feet.
Absolutely.
All right. It meets the backyard standards for an MD at 11 feet?
The variance gave it a rear yard of 11 feet, a front yard of 15 feet, 0 on one side and 5 on the other. The applicant has increased the 5 to 10 feet on the side that does have a setback.
So one of the questions is, does the conditions in the variance that was granted apply?
The variance identifies that I'd have to look at the specific
The
language.
variance identifies it as a one-story structure.
It actually doesn't. It says.
Yeah, it does, because it's in the exhibit,
It says
which we don't have a good copy of.
compliance with Plan 1 Exhibit A, which is a site plan, and it doesn't reference the size of the one-story or two-story elements of the home.
Variance is granted for the following sections of the zoning ordinance for construction in compliance with Plan 1 Exhibit A.
And Exhibit A is a site plan.
I can't tell by this whether or not it references a one-story structure or not. I don't think anybody can.
So again, staff determined in consultation with the city attorney's office that the variance setbacks, or the setbacks approved through the variance process, did apply to this project, subject to the requirement that all other zoning criteria be met. And because the project does meet all other zoning criteria, it was the opinion of the city attorney's office and city staff that those can be carried forward under new ownership as identified in 1708-110.
So if the exhibit did identify it as a one-story structure, which I can't tell, this exhibit's way too blurry, then that would or would not apply.
As identified here in this variance language, staff finds that it doesn't. If the variance was granted because the structure proposed was one story, that could be utilized as a reason to justify that the need for one story to carry forward under any new development. But that has not been identified by staff in any of the documentation, and therefore staff and the city attorney's office found that these setbacks apply, subject to all other criteria of the medium density residential district.
Okay. Oh, I need to say here, I did go by and look at the site, just because I couldn't tell what was around it by the written material, and it's quite a different look when you see what looks like a sort of empty lot next to it, the weird gate on one side, and how little access this parcel, how little frontage this parcel actually has. Just the 15 or 20 feet of frontage, and that's it. Okay. Next question. It says it's do we have a standard for what is a parking space?
9 by 19.
9 by 9, okay. It just barely fits that. So either, in my mind, either this is a great example of where we're going in the future. There's a big move in the Bay Area to get denser, get smaller, get tighter. So either this is a great example of where we're going, or an interesting example of how we shouldn't get there. Anyway, so none of the setbacks for the second story applies. Is the city attorney's ruling?
The medium density district identifies a 10-foot setback for anything up to 25 feet in height. This structure is lower than 25 feet and meets the setbacks identified in the zoning district, so there was not an increase for the setback because of the height.
So you're saying the small lot does not apply. The small lot calls for a 20-foot setback for 2 stories.
That's correct.
Okay, so the medium density residential setbacks are less restrictive than the small lot setbacks? That's a little strange.
Welcome to our zoning code.
Okay. I'm also worried about the looming on this. We're going to have a 20-foot plus tall structure very close to the property lines all the way around. For the person next door, and for the small lot behind it that's even smaller than your lot, if it ever is developed, all of a sudden you'll have a neighbor that can brush your teeth if they care to. We've had some examples of that in town with, large structures looming on the edge of, minimum setbacks. And I've got some problems with it. To the rear of the property, you now have a deck which is going to be used, which looks right down into everything around you. So, at any rate. But that isn't a question. That's more or less of a statement. Okay, I think that's it for my questions of staff.
I'd like to just thank you guys for your preparedness and clarity. I think you've put a lot of thought into this. When I walk the street, it's clear that it is a very idiosyncratic kind of zone, which I appreciate. And I think what you've come up with will work well in there.
Guess it's my turn. You want a second bite?
I was questioning last time, and I thought we were doing how much time?
I thought we're still doing questions.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah,
So we'll have another chance.
We'll have a discussion after the public hearing.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Erica, you're on. So, I just couldn't help but pay some attention to the water availability, or excuse me, water neutrality. I got to shift from county to city here. The water neutrality requirements. And in part because I know that in the commercial setting, scrutiny of, where projects stand with their compliance is a council priority. And so I thought, well, here's a project on the agenda with water neutrality requirements. I might as well at least look at the ordinance and see what it says. And one of the things I noticed is that it doesn't define the requirement. I don't find any place in the ordinance where it says how the applicant is to calculate the requirement of the project. It implies, but so far as I can tell, does not state that the requirement that's to be neutralized by the retrofits, et cetera, is the difference between the existing use or demand of the property and the demand of the project, but it doesn't say that. So is there a well-settled interpretation, or is this yet another case of a part of the code that could use a whole lot of work?
Say yes.
So there is a white paper. I think 2 predecessors ago, the Public Works Director put together a white paper based on the ordinance that was provided.
So the applicants have guidelines from the white paper.
And it's also on the Public Works site under the forms and documents, and it's very clear about the table that they have, and they provide Santa Rosa's guidelines and Napa County's environmental requirements for septic systems. So it's pretty well defined, but there's still questions that come up.
Okay, well, you've pointed me in the right direction. I need to read the white paper.
Okay.
Thank you. That was my only question, so if there are no other questions for staff, I'll open the public hearing. This is when I get to bang the gavel. I love that. Public hearing's open. Would anyone like to speak to the commission about this item? Please. The microphone is for you.
Shavana, Michael, welcome to her. Shavana, you are most welcome. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much.
I have some critical comments to say, but it's not for any lack of love for you guys, that I'm sure we'll get to know one another well. Okay. Noah, could you put the map you had up there so I can settle? It seems that my name is Saeed, and I own the parcel directly behind the candidate's parcel and the catty corner lot on Charter Oak. So you So here's the lot. This is the flag lot referred to, which this is 963 McCorkle, 965 McCorkle, and I think I'm 967 or something, because and then I own this house here, which also is served by the same driveway. My grandmother had this house, this house, this house, sold this house to Daryl Galusha, who then sold it to Carlos Uribe, is in this house. And what wasn't clear from the pictures is all these houses are a single story, the ones right adjacent, except for the houses across the street where the ones that were moved from a different part of a different neighborhood. And so I have two concerns. One is quality of life.
Said, the more you can do at the microphone, the better our record, please.
All right, sir.
Thank you.
Let me also say your design is wonderful. I really appreciate it. My concerns are height, quality of life, because you raise the level of the height there, the neighborhood behind, which is currently a garden, sheds, and tomatoes and olives. So the question of light, there's a lot of light there for agriculture still. And I would like to, it's in my private interest to preserve that. It is a non-conforming developable lot, and has been my family's ambition to someday develop it. So for a long time we thought we could not do it because the fire chief said they couldn't get an emergency vehicle into the lot because the neighbor's house, prior owners, had built, enclosed a carport adjacent to the driveway, and that's, I think, the zero setback. So it's been enclosed, and for 3 generations we never knew there was a variance established. So I'm a little alarmed at this, and I don't know what my rights are about that, but I raised that to your attention, that we thought it was just an encroachment that would someday, when it was developed with taste, et cetera, that would go away, we'd have normal setbacks. So...
Mr. Said.
Yes, sir.
Is that your first name or last name?
First name.
Said, okay. How wide is your access strip then? For the flag lot?
I'm not sure I have that in my memory. I'd say 8 feet would be my guess.
If it's any more than 12 feet, I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
8 feet.
Yes, sir.
8 feet's less than a standard travel lane on a street.
Yes.
So that's why the fire chief said they couldn't get an emergency vehicle to turn off the McCorkle in there.
He would not get a fire truck through an 8-foot alley. There's no way. 10 feet maybe, but not 8. Well, okay, please go on.
I don't know what, if it's written into law, what recovery I would have as a property owner for that encroachment. So, and that's for your august...
Is it encroaching onto your property or just into the setback?
Into the setback.
Well,
Wow.
it's not an encroachment if they have a right to do it.
Correct.
So
Correct.
we shouldn't call it an encroachment.
I stand corrected.
Please continue.
My other concerns are the height elevation, the changes that would bring. And there's 2 components to this. As I say, I own the house, and I've lived in the house on Charter Oak that connects between Charter Oak and McCorkle for the last 10 years. And have a current permits open to remodel the kitchens and baths in that. It's a duplex, and we rent it out. And the upstairs has this tree house character where you see a 140-degree panorama of the Mayacamas up there. And it's been one of the blessings of that big house to have that. It's been around, my guess is it's 1905. So I'm concerned about the obstruction of that lovely panorama, which affects the property I've been developing, and the quality of life there. And in the adjacent lot, which is the olive trees and the sheds, my ambition would be to someday to develop it with a micro house. And when the buildings go up, the light falls off and you're in a well. This would happen with the apartment building that went up. It cut off the mountains to the east, and it made a well under there in the backyard. Currently, I think there's plans up to develop that long lot that was referred to, the long rectangle between McCorkle. There's currently plans in the works. I've never seen them yet, but I've talked to the property owners. They own the olive oil factory. And so there's development plans going there, and I have no idea what the height restrictions are, but my concern as a property owner and a neighbor would be to maintain the rural character of St. Helena. To me, the urbanization, when you go 2 stories and start building up, is when you start urbanizing. So my concern globally, from a public interest, is that in that area, this changes that complexion from single-story, quaint vistas, lots of air, lots of light, to more discrete enclaves and wells that bigger buildings have. So I believe those are my 3 concerns: setback, and then the height.
Thank you. Thank you for your concerns and your courtesy. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission on this project? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed, and we can discuss and deliberate. Very well then.
You want to be first, yeah?
Commissioner Hale?
I think this is an interesting concept that I see throughout town, where people are concerned about change that their neighbors choose to undertake, and I think what I've always tried to when I talk to the city about a project or consider purchasing something, and I think this is what most people do. You kind of familiarize yourself with both what's around you and I think it's really important that you come to the understanding that what's around you may or may not represent what can happen. What I think the safe zone for both you as a neighbor and future property developer, or when you enhance your property, you're going to be subject to or not subject to, but have available to you the same limits that exist on every parcel. And I don't think we don't have we have setbacks, we have height limits, we have density controls or limits, guidelines in this town. And I think I would encourage everybody in the community, and I always do, to sort of look around and imagine what can be there as your comfort zone, as opposed to when something happens that's within its limit. Not fighting it or countering it based on change in itself. I think we all are we're a nation of laws. We're a city of laws and we kind of enter into this contract with each other with the understanding that peace kind of remains because we understand what we can do and we understand what our neighbors are allowed to do. And I think we have to support that. As we, I'm not insensitive to understanding that as things go up around you, it changes things, but that view that you cherish from the second floor of the one area you talked about is theoretically available to this parcel also. It just doesn't exist yet. But I believe it's our job as exercisers of these things to preserve that. Just like we would preserve yours. Your right on the second floor of that dwelling is no different than the imagined right of this person's, and we can't, because something is there and versus not there. In my view, makes no substantial or legal difference. So I can be sensitive to the change. Change can be difficult, but I think the higher principle, if there is one, is that we have to preserve. And I think a lot of the upset would be dampened if the approach was, and I always encourage the city to do this when people, question what their neighbors are doing. I think it's important to educate people as to what they can do. That's that comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Hale. Commissioner Pont?
Like I said earlier, this is definitely a more urban approach. It's the largest box you can get on the lot, which is what you see in urban areas, largest box you can get on the lot. But I've got some pushback about that. I am worried about the looming. If you had the next door lot, you'd be worried about that too, I would think. And when they put up 2 stories, looking directly into your windows on potentially all 4 sides, you might have some problems with that too. I don't think the house really matches the neighborhood that well. Across the street, they're 2 stories, but they're 2 stories with dormers. They're 2 stories with sunken porches, with setback doors, with garages underneath. So a very different kind of style of house. The houses with gingerbread on it. I don't see any gingerbread on this house. This is a rather straightforward box. I think we can do some, and can't forget the standing metal seamed roof. It seems like every house that goes into town recently that's got a price tag on it has a standing metal seamed roof. I don't think you'll find a standing metal seamed roof in the neighborhood. So, I don't think the design matches. I don't think the fact that it looms over everything is exactly what you want on a small lot. I think there are things that could be done about that. Could change the roof treatment, could close that back porch, balcony. But as it is, I don't like the design. I don't think it fits. And I'm not sure piecemeal urbanization is the way we want to go.
Thank you, Commissioner Pont. I will vary from custom and go next to last.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot to think about here. So my comments may be a bit scattered. I haven't really organized at all. I opened up an online, well, I downloaded the packet online so that I could blow up the parcel map on my screen. And for what it's worth, Saeed, the assessor's map pretty clearly indicates that your access strip is 8 feet wide. So this is really a complete digression from the project, but it does look to me like you would have to find some alternative approach to provide emergency vehicle access. to that parcel. It's APN 11 here, but that's just a digression. If you wanted to talk to me about it offline some other time, I'd be happy to discuss it with you. I'm a big believer in small lots and small lot development, so, you know, going right to the philosophical side, you know, there's really no one left from the council I served on to disagree with me, so I'm pretty free to take responsibility for the small lot ordinance we have, but I think actually I earned that credit. And I campaigned for that because I thought it was important to recognize that the principal driver in escalating real estate values is land value. Not that cost of construction hasn't gone up horrifically over the years, it has. Nevertheless, the biggest factor over time is land value, and about the only tool the city has, other than subsidy, to mitigate the long-term trend of increased land values is to provide for development of smaller parcels. So that was my thinking back in '93 when we adopted the current somewhat dated general plan and followed up with a zoning ordinance, and I think the same thing today. And I look at this project and I think about the neighborhood I live in on Tainer Street, because it's a neighborhood that has a lot of very small lots and it's familiar to me. There are 3 very small lots on Stockton Street, a short distance away, all of them essentially with the original, at least the original footprint of the 19th century cottages that were first built on them. I don't think any of those have been expanded in any significant way, and the lots are so small it would be hard. And there are still 2 homes on Tainer adjacent to mine that are essentially in their original, very small 19th century configuration. Honestly, I'm surprised no one has come to the city with an application for a demolition permit and a new expanded project. I wonder, honestly, whether projects on those lots would receive the same kind of response as projects on McCorkle, which has a very different look. I don't know exactly how I feel about that. There are lots of 2-story homes in town, many of them well over 100 years old, but we also see 2-story homes across McCorkle from the subject property on very small lots. Can't remember if those were Steve Hasty's or someone else. I think that was a Hasty project there, but that's a long time ago. And at the same time, I'm very much empathetic with concerns both about the build a box to the limits of the envelope approach. It doesn't appeal to me aesthetically, and I understand and take to heart concerns about creating longer, deeper shadows that really affect surrounding property. One ends up being, I think, faced with, at least for somewhat of my larger philosophical inclinations, conflicting impulses. I think it's a good thing for our small lots to be used. They are our best way of creating more affordable, and I don't mean low-income housing necessarily, but affordable in relation to the rest of the market without direct subsidy or even indirect subsidy. And I'm not really inclined to want to impose my aesthetic vision on anyone else, largely because I don't want anyone else to impose theirs on me. There is a libertarian streak in there somewhere. In terms of where this house, this proposal fits into the fabric of this block of McCorkle, honestly, to my eye, and I went to the site just for that reason, so I could see what the context is. I think that block is varied and eccentric enough. This fits in well enough to meet the standard as I would apply it from our design review ordinance. But that's what I have to say for the moment. Bobby?
Wow. Well, I am in agreement with what everyone has said so far. Believe it or not.
I'm not sure I'm in agreement with myself, so that's
well,
that's really something.
I'm a bit disorganized, just I'm a natural. I do think I have a libertarian streak too, but first of all, I want to thank you for your the amazing care you took in designing this, and it's everything you did to make it energy efficient and beautiful. I like the design. I think it's really pretty. I don't like in some neighborhoods maxing out, the McMansions on the tiny, it doesn't fit, but I live on McCorkle, as I said, and if you live on the east end of McCorkle, you don't call it idiosyncratic, you call it idiot-syncratic. Or at least some of us do, but it's very eclectic, and there are two-story apartment buildings where I live up there on either side of me, and big $2 million homes on the other. So I mean, it's charming in its own way. So I don't think that this ruins the neighborhood. I mean, I don't think it ruins the look of the neighborhood. I think it fits right in with the eclectic kind of crazy part of the neighborhood, look of the neighborhood. But I really, really, believe me, I sympathize with the loss of privacy. There won't be noise here, but, I have two apartments next to me. So I really appreciate the difficulty with having this kind of building going on around you. Of course, as was said eloquently by Commissioner Hale, you can't, the other people who build there and modify there may be doing the same things as long as it's, within, at the higher principle here. And I don't think it hurts the neighborhood at all. I think it fits in. So I really like you guys, and I like the project, and it'll be great to have you on McCorkle Avenue.
Another idiot.
So, I have no problem with this. And I did check to see if I should recuse myself from this because I live on the same place, but apparently I'm okay. So just to acknowledge that. So, and, thank you guys for being so eloquent. Appreciate it.
Is there any further discussion or comment from the commission? And if not, is there a motion?
I move we accept staff recommendations on this project and approve it.
Any further discussion? If none, Ms. Gamero, would you take the vote, please?
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Commissioner Hale,
Yes.
Commissioner Pont,
No.
and Chair Hardy.
Yes. That brings us to the next item in the public hearing section of the meeting, which is request for discretionary demolition and design review approval to demolish an existing 632 square foot accessory structure and 88 square feet of a previously constructed addition to the primary structure, both constructed in 2001, and to construct a 395 square foot addition to the primary home located at 1459 Kearney Street in the medium density residential zoning district. Director Hausch, looks like this is your project in any way, even if it were Aaron's. Please.
You're stuck with me. As mentioned, the project before you this evening is a request for design review approval. There's actually a typo in the staff report. This project does not need discretionary demolition. That was a oversight on my part. Given that it is not requesting to demolish a residential unit and the accessory structure is not historic, it is exempt from the requirements of discretionary design review. That was a mistake on my part in drafting the staff report. The resolution is correct, and there's specific zoning code exemptions for non-historic residential accessory buildings, which are not a residential unit. When I was drafting the staff report, I overlooked those, and so I apologize to the commission and the architects for that. However, the project is requesting design review approval to demolish an existing 632 square foot accessory structure and a portion of previously constructed addition to the primary structure, both constructed in 2001, and to construct a relatively small addition to the primary home located at 1459 Kearney Street in the medium density zoning district. And this property is also located in the Oak Avenue Historic District and is a contributor to that district. The property at 1459 Kearney is a 16,478 square foot residential lot. It was remodeled in 2001, and minor modifications and additions were constructed to the rear of the parcel, the home. At the same time, a 632 square foot pool house was constructed, and those are which is proposed to be demolished. The applicants have indicated they intend to actually move it, but that's not a part of this, and so we're looking at it as a removal, a demolition. As identified in the staff report, the project is found to be exempt from CEQA under section 15301. There's a number of general plan policies which staff found to apply to the project site. The original home was constructed in 1899. There is and is identified as a contributor to the Oak Avenue Historic District. It's a beautiful home. There is a historic resource analysis that reviewed the proposed modifications, both the demolition elements as well as the new construction, all of which are to the rear of the home, are not visible from the street, and do not modify historic portions of the original home, and so therefore were not deemed to be impacts to the structure or the district. The project the building is higher than 25 feet in height and is subject to the increased setback requirements in the medium density zoning district. However, all of the proposed modifications meet those setbacks. There is a portion of the existing home which encroaches, but that's not a part of this proposal and therefore is not subject to any element of the Planning Commission review. The project meets the floor area ratio, the lot coverage requirements, and staff has found it consistent with all the design review criteria identified in the zoning district. Therefore, staff is recommending approval. One last minute comment came in this afternoon in support of the proposed modifications. I believe you have that on your at the dais, and it's from a neighboring resident. That concludes staff's presentation. We are recommending approval of both the design and that the Planning Commission find the project exempt from CEQA. The applicant's architects are here and are happy to answer any questions and may have a brief presentation. I'm not sure. No, they're just here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Director Hausch. Is there a presentation from the applicant? No. Very good, thank you. None is required. So this then is the time for questions of staff. I'm seeing no questions for staff, which means if I can unbury it, I get to bang the gavel again.
Can we have a smaller gavel?
They want to take my gavel away. That's really sad for me. The public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who would like to speak about this project? Seeing none? Sorry. I'll close the public hearing. Well, we didn't have any questions. I'm hoping we have some comments.
Well, my only comment is I don't have any problem with this project, and I think it's great that the changes actually bring it into the FAR standards for the zone that they're in. So that's a bonus for the city. Let's do it.
Commissioner Manette?
I'm cool.
You can take that lots of ways, Bobby.
Okay, we're good to my left. To my right, Commissioner Hale?
No, I'm good. I just thank the applicants for their, again, their clarity.
I believe, oh, there it is.
You don't have to hold it down, Dan, just push it. Yeah, there.
Oh, okay.
And push it.
Well prepared, well conceived. Let's bring it on.
It's a strikingly beautiful home of its period. I couldn't help but be taken with it when I stopped to look at it this afternoon. And I know that this remodel detracts none, and I think overall enhances the character. I will say this is just a personal thing. I was hoping, as I looked to the historic report, to learn more about the house's history. So that was a little bit disappointing, but I could see that the report covered what it needed to. That's it for me. I have no issues or concerns about this one.
I can add too. I'm usually sensitive to neighbors when they comment, and that the only comment was positive. So that was also heartening. And I don't know if you outreached the neighbors, but if you did, I appreciate it, and it's really important. Thanks.
Move the staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Gamero?
Commissioner Pont,
Yes.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Commissioner Hale,
Yes.
Chair Hardy.
Yes.
Can you note that that was a record speed?
Yeah, we're going to start timing them.
Number of hammer beats per vote? No.
Yeah, well, just don't start counting those. So, thank you all. That brings us to the scheduled matters. Appointment of a vice chair. Does anyone have a nomination to make?
I nominate John Pont.
Second.
Third. That was a nomination, a second, and a third. I hope you got that. And since, you know, it wouldn't matter whether you declined or not, I'm not going to offer you the opportunity to speak. Ms. Guerrero, would you?
Do I get a half-size hammer?
No, when I'm gone, you get the real thing. Please.
Commissioner Monette?
Yes, yes.
Commissioner Hale?
Yes.
Chair Hardy?
Yes.
And Commissioner Pont, do you accept?
I accept and abstain at the same time.
Okay, moving right along. Are there any department reports?
There is, thank you, Chair. I will actually turn it over to Ms. Gamero to talk about the addition of the water bottles on your diet. Actually, I could do it. I was going to. So we had a request from the City Council to not utilize plastic cups anymore for the water. In addition, these bottles have been provided by the city for various reasons as part of our water efficiency and try to reduce the use of obviously bottled water, and so we will be providing those bottles to you with the water in the pitchers, and no more plastic cups will be provided at the dais. So bring that bottle or a different bottle for using to drink, a different reusable container, because we will no longer be using the plastic cups. It's just, that's it, and that is not plastic. There are sleeves you can order online to protect the glass bottles, so just in case you're interested. Separate from that, yeah, that's from the city. So separate from that, we are, as you know, we're down one commissioner, and so the city has been recruiting for another commissioner, and I believe they are interviewing potential candidates. The city council is on the 12th, which is 1 week from today. So hopefully we will be able to have a fifth commissioner seated and be whole. So stay tuned for that. And then finally, a very important update, the general plan EIR comment review period, as you're all aware, ended January 2nd. We have received over 300 individual comments. I have a request from Commissioner Pont to collate and provide those, and I'm sorry I have been remiss in providing those. I haven't been able to get to that yet, but I will provide those those comments ahead of this meeting, but we are scheduling the presentation of the draft final EIR comments and response to comments for the March 19th Planning Commission meeting. So that's a very critical date for the commission and the public to be aware of. The format of that will be a public hearing. We will present the draft 2040 general plan, the EIR itself, all of the comments received, and the response to those comments, which may result in some minor changes to the documents, both for clarity and to update the information if needed. If the changes are deemed to be significant enough, we will have to recirculate the document. I don't have an answer as to whether we're there yet or not. I'm working with the consultant to finalize our preparation and also the city attorney's office to determine how we need to reply or respond to the comments. But just know that that date is set. This is the first public announcement of that date. And I will be informing the City Council of that tomorrow. We have a update to the City Council scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, and I will present that to them as well tomorrow.
May I ask a question? Noah, if you do have to recirculate, can you recirculate on the shorter basis?
It will be a 45-day.
Okay.
So you may recall, we provided 72 days of comment period.
Way over.
Significantly beyond, just to address the holidays and because of the breadth of the documents and all those things, we wanted to ensure people had
Kudos
time.
for you for doing that, yeah. But we'd go the shorter route.
Absolutely.
If we need to okay.
And it'll be very limited. It's just the law says if there's significant information or significant and impactful changes, we must recirculate to allow an opportunity for another review. And we haven't determined whether that's the case or not, but March 19th is the date for the presentation of the final EIR and comments as of right now. That concludes my department report.
Thank you, Commissioner Hausch. We have, as always, a link to the agenda forecast, which I believe leaves us ready to adjourn. Adjourned.